Early autumn had painted the park in the warm colors of gold and amber. In the heart of Moscow, the famous Gorky Park was alive with the quiet beauty of the season. Leaves drifted slowly from tall birch trees, landing softly along the winding paths where families, joggers, and couples enjoyed the calm afternoon. Among them walked Alexander Volkov, a man whose name often appeared in business magazines and financial news. At 38, Alexander had built a fortune that many could only dream of. As the founder of the powerful investment company Volkov Capital, he was known in elite circles as one of the most successful entrepreneurs of his generation. Yet today, he wasn't thinking about business deals or stock markets. Beside him walked Elena Morozova, his fiancée. Elena's long beige coat moved gently in the cool breeze as she held Alexander's arm. Her dark hair caught the soft sunlight, and her cheerful voice blended with the peaceful sounds of the park. "Look at this place," she said with a bright smile, gesturing around them. "I almost forgot how beautiful Moscow can be in autumn." Alexander glanced around. Children laughed near the fountain. A street musician played a quiet violin melody not far from the cafe terrace. The calm atmosphere felt far away from the loud, demanding world of business meetings and corporate negotiations. "You're right," he said, allowing himself a rare moment of relaxation. "I should come here more often." They walked slowly along the wide stone path leading toward the river embankment. Elena squeezed his arm playfully. "But after the wedding," she added, "we won't even be here. Remember? First Italy, then maybe Switzerland. And after that, who knows? Maybe we'll buy a house somewhere near Lake Como." Alexander smiled politely, though his thoughts drifted for a moment. His life had changed drastically in the past 2 years. 2 years ago, he had gone through a difficult divorce. The end of his marriage to Anna had been quiet but painful, buried under the pressure of his growing business empire and endless travel. Eventually, the distance between them had become impossible to ignore. Meeting Elena had felt like a new chapter. Fresh, exciting, uncomplicated. She brought lightness into his life, something he hadn't felt in years. "You're thinking again," Elena teased, nudging him gently. "Just thinking about the future," Alexander replied. They approached the old marble fountain near the center of the park. Water sparkled in the afternoon sun, and a small crowd had gathered around. Alexander turned his head casually toward the opposite path, and suddenly, he stopped walking. His entire body went still. Across the path, standing quietly near a row of birch trees, was a woman he recognized instantly. Anna. The cheerful sounds of the park suddenly felt distant to Alexander Volkov. The laughter of children near the fountain faded into the background, as his eyes remained fixed on the woman standing across the path. It was Anna. For a moment, time seemed to slow down. She stood near the row of slender birch trees that lined the walkway of Gorky Park, wearing a simple gray coat and holding a small handbag. Her dark hair was tied back loosely, and a few strands moved gently in the cool autumn wind. But what made Alexander's heart stop was the unmistakable curve of her belly. Anna was pregnant. "Alexander?" Elena's voice broke the silence beside him. She noticed how suddenly he had frozen. "What happened?" Alexander didn't answer immediately. His gaze stayed locked on Anna, who had also noticed him. For a brief second, surprise flashed across her face. Then she looked down. Elena followed his line of sight. "Do you know her?" Alexander swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. "Yes," he said quietly. Anna slowly began walking toward them. Each step seemed careful, measured. Her hand rested lightly on her stomach as she crossed the path. The distance between them felt strangely heavy, as if the entire park had gone silent to watch the moment unfold. When she finally stopped a few feet away, none of them spoke at first. "Hello, Alexander," Anna said softly. Her voice was calm, but there was a trace of nervousness beneath it. Alexander struggled to process what he was seeing. The last time he had seen Anna was nearly a year ago, during the final meeting with lawyers when they officially ended their marriage. Back then, everything had felt cold and formal. Now she stood before him in the middle of a public park, carrying a child. "Anna," he finally managed. "I didn't expect to see you here." She gave a small, almost sad smile. "Moscow isn't that big," she replied gently. Elena stepped slightly closer to Alexander, her eyes moving between the two of them as she tried to understand the situation. "Alexander," she said quietly, "aren't you going to introduce us?" Alexander hesitated for a brief moment before speaking. "Elena, this is Anna," he said. "My ex-wife." Elena's eyebrows lifted slightly in surprise. "Oh," she said politely, though the tension in her voice was impossible to hide. "I see." Anna nodded respectfully toward her. "Nice to meet you." But Elena's eyes had already shifted downward. She noticed the pregnancy. Her expression slowly changed. The realization was immediate and unsettling. She looked back at Alexander, searching his face for answers he clearly didn't have yet. Meanwhile, Alexander couldn't stop staring at Anna's stomach. His thoughts raced, trying to understand something that didn't make sense. Finally, he spoke again, his voice quieter now. "Anna, are you—" Anna looked at him steadily. For a moment, the world around them continued as normal. People walking, dogs running across the grass, music drifting from a nearby cafe. But for the...
A cold breeze moved through the tall birch trees of Gorky Park, scattering golden leaves across the stone path. The peaceful beauty of the park felt strangely out of place with the heavy silence between the three of them. After a few long moments of standing awkwardly, Anna spoke first. "Maybe we shouldn't discuss this in the middle of the path," she said quietly. She gestured toward a wooden bench not far from the fountain. Alexander nodded slowly, still processing the shock. Elena followed beside him, her expression tense and thoughtful. They sat down. Anna lowered herself carefully onto the bench, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. Alexander sat across from her, while Elena remained close beside him, watching every word and movement. For several seconds, no one spoke. Finally, Alexander leaned forward slightly. "Anna, why didn't you tell me?" he asked. His voice wasn't angry, it was confused. Anna looked down at the ground, watching a few fallen leaves move with the wind. "I tried," she answered softly. "At least in the beginning." Alexander frowned. "What do you mean?" She looked up at him, her eyes calm but tired. "When we separated, you were already traveling constantly. Meetings in London, investors in Dubai, negotiations everywhere." She paused briefly. "You barely had time to sleep, let alone listen to me." Alexander remembered those months clearly. His company, Volkov Capital, had been expanding rapidly, and he had been completely consumed by work. Still, hearing it now made him uneasy. "I didn't know," he said quietly. Anna gave a small understanding smile. "That's exactly the point." Elena had been silent the entire time, but now she finally spoke. "And the baby?" she asked carefully. Her voice was polite, but the tension behind it was clear. Anna placed both hands gently on her stomach. "The baby is healthy," she said calmly. Alexander's heart beat faster. "That's not what she meant," he said softly. "Anna, whose child is it?" For a moment, Anna didn't answer. The wind rustled the leaves again, and somewhere nearby, a child laughed loudly near the fountain. Then Anna met Alexander's eyes. "It's yours." The words landed heavily. Alexander leaned back slowly, his mind spinning. He tried to calculate the timeline, remembering the last months before their divorce. The realization slowly settled in. Elena's face went pale. "You're serious?" she asked, looking at Anna. Anna nodded once. "Yes?" Another silence followed, longer this time. Alexander ran a hand through his hair, overwhelmed. His future had seemed so clear only 15 minutes earlier. A wedding, a honeymoon, a carefully planned life with Elena. Now everything felt uncertain. Anna finally broke the silence again. "I'm not here to cause problems," she said calmly. "I didn't ask for money and I didn't try to find you." Alexander looked up. "Then why tell me now?" Anna took a slow breath. "Because whether we like it or not," she said gently, "you're going to be a father."
The late afternoon light slowly faded over the paths of Gorky Park. The golden leaves, that had once made the park look cheerful now, drifted quietly across the ground, as if mirroring the heavy mood surrounding the three people on the bench. For Alexander Volkov, the world that had felt so certain only minutes earlier had suddenly become fragile. He sat silently, his elbows resting on his knees, staring at the ground as he tried to absorb everything Anna had just said. "You're going to be a father." The words echoed again in his mind. Beside him, Elena Morozova had grown very quiet. She had imagined this walk as a peaceful afternoon with the man she loved, perhaps talking about wedding plans, future travels, and their life together. Instead, she had just learned that Alexander's past was not as finished as she had believed. Finally, Elena spoke. "How far along are you?" she asked Anna, her voice steady but careful. "Almost 6 months," Anna replied. Alexander's head lifted immediately. 6 months? He repeated. Anna nodded. The timeline was clear. The baby had been conceived shortly before the divorce papers were finalized. Back then, both of them had been too exhausted and emotionally distant to notice how their lives were about to change. Alexander leaned back against the bench and looked up at the pale Russian sky. He felt a strange mixture of guilt, responsibility, and uncertainty. "I should have known," he said quietly. Anna shook her head. "No. Life doesn't always give us clear moments to understand things. A group of teenagers passed by laughing loudly, completely unaware of the life-changing conversation happening just a few meters away. Alexander turned toward Anna again. "Why didn't you try harder to reach me?" he asked. Anna sighed softly. "When our marriage ended, you seemed relieved to move on. Your company, Volkov Capital, was expanding, and your life was moving forward quickly." She glanced briefly toward Elena before continuing. "I didn't want to feel like a problem you had to solve." Elena lowered her gaze, thinking carefully about everything she had heard. For the first time since the meeting began, Alexander spoke with firmness. "This child is my responsibility," he said. "And yours too," he added gently, looking at Anna. Anna didn't argue. "I never said otherwise." The wind grew colder as evening slowly approached. Alexander stood up from the bench and looked at both women. "Nothing about this is simple," he admitted, "but ignoring it would only make things worse." Elena watched him closely. "So what happens now?" she asked. Alexander took a deep breath. "Now," he said slowly, "we stop pretending this is a coincidence in a park." He looked at Anna with seriousness. "We meet again tomorrow, somewhere quiet. We talk about the baby, about the future, and about what role I should play." For a moment, none of them spoke. The peaceful park continued around them as always. But for Alexander, Anna, and Elena, the next chapter of their